Hello, welcome back to Veggie Plot. Today's video we're going to be in the polytunnel, in the greenhouse and up at the allotment. That's the plan. Anyway, I've got quite a lot to do today. I've been in the polytunnel sorting a few things out, but I wanted to show you some of these plants that have really come on leaps and bounds in the last week or so. And these are my butternut squash. And I think these are, yeah, Sweet Max. They're an F1 butternut squash. And I'm going to try growing these in the polytunnel this year to see if we can get a better crop, because I did read somewhere that they like warmth. And in the British climate, obviously there can be problems with that, as we all know. It can be a bit variable sometimes. So I'm going to try growing these indoors in the polytunnel this year. But they've come on leaps and bounds. Got a whole... I'll show you a whole tray. Got quite a few of these coming on, so these are going to be growing in here, most of them. I might try one or two outside. So if you haven't grown any butternut squash before, you can. I think there's Hunter, which is quite a good one for the UK, and this one which is Sweet Max. So give them a go, well worth trying if you haven't done before. There are other jobs to do as well. I've got lots and lots of plants to prick out. Now, if you're new to gardening, you might not have heard of that term, but pricking out is basically where you take the little seedlings that you have and you take them out of the pots they're in, or cells, and put them into bigger pots and just enable them to grow on, i.e. get bigger. So that's what pricking out is. And so these are little sunflowers, and these need doing now. Now they've got their second leaves. And the other thing I've got to do at some point very soon, though maybe not today, is basil, and this is Dolce Vita basil. It grows really easily. If you grow them from seed, sprinkle them in a tray, and then these will all need pricking out probably later on next week. So that's another job, lots of pricking out to do today. Another thing that's really important at this time of year, if you've been growing things indoors and you're new to it, is hardening off. Now that's another weird name, isn't it? You know, hardening off. But basically what it means is you take it out of a very cosseted warm environment and start putting it outside during the day, and perhaps bring it back in at night and so on. So let's have a quick look outside and we'll see what I've got hardening off outside at the moment. Now, I spoke about all of these things I think in my last video, and they're still out here hardening off. These are the peas, which will need to go up at the allotment, strawberries and various other plants, and some French beans, which I think are pretty much hardened off now, and the onions, so they've all got to go out in the next week or so. But what I've been doing today is moving out my sweet corn, and this is Swift and Incredible. So I've got two types. I love these Incredible. They've got this lovely sort of red stems to them. So these are all beginning to harden out, and I'm hoping I shall get these up at the allotment next week. And then we've got some courgettes. So we've got Limona over here, and they're hardening off, and we've got Green Machine here. So yeah, really important, if you haven't done so already, to get your plants out and start hardening them off and get them used to the sunshine, the wind and the rain and so on, toughen them up a bit before they go out on the allotment. Right, first things first, let's get these little sunflowers done. So as I say, these are the little sunflowers, and you can see they're just beginning to get their second leaves. So we need to get these planted up before they get too matted with roots in that tray. These are the ones there that I'm growing. They're sunflower teddy bear. They're like a soft, fluffy sort of petaled sunflower. Quite unusual, quite pretty. I've grown the tall ones before, as I mentioned in a previous video, but not these dwarfs. So looking forward to seeing what these are like this year. I think they're multiple blooms on the same plant, which will be good, which means we should have more cut flowers and so on. Not great for the bees, but I'm growing these for us, for the house. So I've done one already. This is what we're aiming for, to get the little plants into their own individual pots. So the way I do it is I'm just using sort of standard sort of peat-free compost from the garden centre, just popping a little in the tray and making a little hole, a little indentation. And then I'm using a fork, which is one of my favourite pricking out tools, if you can see this. And then all I'm doing is getting the fork and just going around one of the little seedlings, just getting underneath it with a fork and then just gently lifting it out. And that should hopefully bring with it as much root as possible. You can just see the roots sticking out the bottom there. And then we put this into this pot. So if I can put this back here without dropping anything. So just get the pot, put the seedling in with the fork, gently hold it, and then put a little bit of compost around the edge and just gently firm it in, give it a tap. And that's all we have to do. It's quite simple really. It's just really for newbies who haven't done this before. It can be quite a bit daunting first time taking things out and pricking things out. So that's what we're aiming for. And then we'll put these into a tray and then water them in. Right, that's got those finished off. Just put them up here with the others. I think what we ended up with was 21 little plants, which was quite nice. That's the last one. So yeah, all potted up, pricked out, potted up. And then these will be good in here in these pots probably for the next, I don't know, 2-3 weeks maybe, maximum. There's enough food in the compost according to the bag for 4 to 5 weeks, so that should be, I don't need to feed them. But yeah, I should just put them up here and give them a little water. Not overwater them, but you basically need to make sure that the soil that you've disturbed around the roots sort of re-embeds around them, and there's plenty of water for those micro hairs on the roots to actually get to, because transplanting and pricking out can be rather traumatic, especially if it's really hot. And yeah, let me just show you what it's like in the polytunnel at the moment. Temperature wise, it's about midday I think, so it's kind of cozy. But yeah, this is the temperature we're looking at. So it's got up to 37 recently. We're nearly on 32 at the moment, so not as warm for some of you in your parts of the country and parts of the world, but for here it's kind of hot. Right, I wanted to show you something else that I've started today and try sowing seeds for microgreens. So yeah, I'll get on and do that now. I don't know if you've grown microgreens, but you can buy special seeds for them, grow all sorts of types. But I basically save seeds from previous years and then regrow those. One that I particularly like doing is sunflower seeds. I haven't grown them before. You basically, at the end of the year, you save the heads, you hang them upside down, let them dry, and then you take the seeds out, store them somewhere where they're dry, and then yeah, you just put them in there over the winter. Nowhere where the mice can get to them, by the way, because they will sniff them out and eat them if you don't seal them up. Yeah, and then next year what you can do is you can get yourself a couple of these sort of gravel trays, or trays with no holes in, and you can put a thin layer of compost in the bottom. It doesn't have to be deep. Make it quite moist, sprinkle your seeds quite liberally over the top, push them in, another light layer of compost over the top, and then if you put another tray over the top of it, that basically helps cut out the light from them, because what you want them to do is when they shoot, you want the stems of the little plants, and we'll use this perhaps as an example, but obviously I'm not going to eat these. You want the stems of the little sunflowers to grow really quite tall, and just have the first leaves on. You don't need second leaves or anything like that. And then you can cut them off with a pair of scissors, and you can eat them in salads and stuff, and they're really delicious. I did it a few years ago, and I thought I'd retry this year. So that's what's in here. This is last year's sunflower seeds, which, because most sunflowers these days are F1s, it means that the seeds that if you've resowed them the next year, they won't grow true anyway, so you might as well eat them as microgreens. But another seed that you can do it with is, say at the end of your pea season, and you've got quite some peas that have gone over, i.e. they're a bit tough, and you know, when they go a bit yucky, a bit hard and dry and mealy, you know, you can save those peas, put them on a tray in your kitchen and let them dry out. And then next year in the spring, you can sow them as microgreens. You could, if they're not F1, I suppose, sow them, grow peas. But yeah, that's what I'm going to do now with these in this tray I've already prepared. This is a tray I prepared earlier in Blue Peter style. Basically what I've done is I've put about 1 centimetre to 1 inch of just sort of compost in the bottom here. And then what you want to do, what I'm going to do, this tray has holes in, by the way. It's not as it can drain. So then I'm going to water this compost, get it nice and wet, get a good soaking. Then if you take the peas, and just like the sunflowers, just sprinkle them liberally all over the surface. Because you're not going to prick these out or anything. We're just going to grow them and then trim them off to eat the shoots in salads. So I just want a decent covering. Right, we'll save those for another sowing. And then what I do is I'm just going to push these into this damp compost. When those are all pushed into the wet compost, I'll just give them a light sprinkling of compost just over the top, just to make sure they've got some moisture all over them, tops and bottom. And then what we need to do is cover them over with some of these gravel trays, which I mentioned earlier. So I'm just going to take these trays and put them upside down on top like that. And then basically what that'll do is exclude the light. So when they shoot, they're going to shoot for the light, make long little stems. And hopefully in a week or two, we should be harvesting those and eating them in salads, which will be really nice. Right, I want to pop up to the greenhouse now. I've got quite a lot to do up there. I need to tidy it out and start getting it ready for the chilies, the aubergines and some smaller tomatoes. So let's head up there. I think it probably needs a bit of a clean too. Right, the greenhouse is one of those things which I've just sort of forgotten about really. I've just not been concentrating as much as the polytunnel. So let's have a look inside and see what needs doing. All the pots to sort out for the tomatoes and chilies. Yeah, it's slightly chaotic in here. Plants to get out, watering trays and things to sort out, and more grow bags to get. And I've still got lots of these lovely Crown Prince squash in here. Look at them. That one's beginning to turn, that needs eating next, but some of them are absolutely enormous. Really still good. But yeah, lots of things to crack on, get on and do in this screen. Right, actually change of plan. I've decided I'm not going to do that. It's really hot here at the moment. It's 34 degrees in here and hotter in the greenhouse. It's sort of practically midday. So what I've come down to do is get some gloves, and we'll go straight up to the polytunnel. What am I saying? Not polytunnel, up to the allotment. We'll go up to the allotment first and plant some of these onions and get the beds ready perhaps for the peas that need to go in. So I've got the onions here. These are the sets and they're looking pretty good. The pots, yeah, there's roots coming out the bottom of the pot, so I imagine, yeah, plenty of roots on these. So what we'll do is we'll take this tray of onions and that tray of onions up to the other allotment and maybe those small dwarf broad beans there, and we'll get them out in the ground. I'm not going to do the beans yet, these French beans, they can wait. So anyway, let's grab a tray of these and we'll head on up to the allotment. Right, here we are up at the plot. Yes, looking a little overgrown. Haven't been up here for a while. I need to get a newer lawnmower, the strimmer's broken at the moment. But yeah, lots to do. Anyway, I'll pick the tray up, we'll walk up the allotment and we'll have a look around, and then we'll get these onions in the ground. So the first thing which just caught my eye actually is this purple artichoke. Look, beauties coming already. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, brilliant. Looking forward to those. They should be lovely this year, but looks like there's a bit of weeding to do. Yeah, looks like all the leeks have gone to seed too. Anyway, let's get on. We're going to weed that bit over there and then we'll get the onions in. Right, let's get all that weeded. I'm just going to leave all these poppies in. I'll transfer these over to this bed in a few days' time. Should we have a look at the garlic while that's filling up? They look like they're thickening up nicely. I've just got to feed them a little bit and maybe cut off these lower leaves because they're beginning to get a bit of rust on them. But yeah, they're looking okay. And it's nearly full up. Let's turn that off. Let's go and get these onions in the ground, shall we? Right, before we get started, I like to make out a little stick, like a measuring stick. Because onions tend to be planted out about 4 inches apart and about 10 to 12 inches, you know, the row spacing. So I have this little stick. I've just sort of cut little notches on and a line here, so that's 4 inches approximately, which enables me to work out the spacing between each set when it goes in the ground. And then obviously I've got another line down here at about 10 inches. I don't go the full 12. When that enables me to space the rows easily. So rather than carrying a tape measure around, I just leave this in the shed. It gives me measurements for any time I need to use them. Right, so we've obviously got the sets in their trays, and they're beginning to root out the bottom. Look at them, lovely, aren't they? Perfect. Right, and these are the seton onions. So basically you just put your finger in the base there and then pop them out, and then you come out with a nice set of roots on that. It looks lovely, doesn't it? And then we'll pop that in the ground and water them in. And you need to keep onions sort of well watered. They don't like to dry out, as they might go to bolt and go to seed. But yeah, these are looking good, so let's get them in the ground. What I want to do is just make a little hole every 4 inches, just like that. And then we can come along and we can put some water in the hole. There's a bit of moisture in the ground, but not much. And now that's done, we'll take the onion I loosened earlier, great roots, give them a little wiggle so it's not too tightly rooted. I'm going to just pop that in the ground, same sort of height as it was growing, and just gently firm it in like that. And that's what I'll just do for all of them, put the label in, and yeah. And there we go. So I'm going to get on and do the rest of those. I've got quite a few trays to do. 1, 2, 3, 4 by 12, 48, nearly 100 onions. So anyway, I'll crack on. Right, that's all the onions done. I've got some setons here and stirrons up the end. I think there are roughly 90, 96 in all, but I've got some more to go in down the end. I've got some shallots to go in down the end. Not technically an onion, type of onion. But before we do any of that, I've got these broad beans. Now, these are dwarf broad bean. They are called Oscar. I got them from She Grows Veg, and I think, yeah, I sowed them on the 12th of the 3rd. But I think it must have been very cold or something. I had pretty poor germination, which is a bit disappointing. But yeah, they're miniature plants, anyway, miniature beans, so that's okay. So I need to get them in the ground. The roots are looking all right, but yeah, hardly got any out of this whole tray. I only got about sort of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 or 8 plants, so a bit disappointing. So next year, perhaps I'll try something else. I thought they'd be really good up here because it's quite windy. And so some dwarf beans would have been good, but anyway, try something else next year. Right, let's get these in the ground, just in here, and then we'll head off back home and take a look at the greenhouse. Right, we got all those broad beans in and the onions, didn't we? We're back in the greenhouse now. I think this video is getting really long, so I'm actually going to save this for another time. So I hope you have a lovely week, and I'll see you soon.